His brother was friends with my cheating ex-husband, so I avoided him. Our parents came to my house for money to help my brother because he's broke. I'm 36F and divorced 34M Martin 5 years ago. Our divorce came after almost 6 years together and 2 years married due to his adultery. After our 2-year anniversary, he admitted to a 2-month co-worker affair. My time was up. He stated he wanted to give our marriage another chance and be honest with me to make it work. But after I discovered his infidelity, there was no turning back. We split after he departed at my request, giving me the house and him a second wife. A few weeks after our divorce, he married his affair co-worker and moved to Philadelphia. We haven't spoken or seen each other. Thank goodness I didn't try him again. The affair ruined my marriage and brothers. Nick, my 34-year-old younger brother, knew Martin. Mutual friends introduced us in college, despite their closeness. I anticipated Nick's assistance during our divorce. Because Martin cheated on me and Nick was my brother, I expected him to understand and support me. I was astonished to learn Nick knew about the divorce, because Martin told him when I told my family about his infidelity. He persuaded me to stay with Martin and restore our marriage, because he wanted it to work. I was surprised he suggested this and told him I would never stay with him. His continued contact with me disappointed me. Martin, despite my mistreatment. I expected him to cut Martin off because I was conflicted about the divorce and affair when I found out. Nick claimed that I shouldn't expect anything from him because he and Martin had been friends for a long time, and it wasn't his fault we got together, married, and divorced. He wants to avoid this and stay with Martin and me. I told him I thought it was diplomatic. Whether I was right or wrong would not. He could choose Martin and stay in touch with him or me, his sister. Since we were close as kids, I expected him to choose me. I forbade my brother from seeing my ex-husband. He kept friends with Martin and believed I was crazy, surprised me. He believed I was petty and immature, therefore he wanted people who appreciated him and wouldn't make him choose between two amazing people. I was evidently boosting their ego. Nick disappointed me, so I stopped talking to him. He and his affair partner visited Martin's second marriage, sealed it. I never spoke to him after 5 years. Our parents have tried to reconcile, but we know our perspectives. We visit our folks on holidays. Other family occasions like weddings bring us together, but we never talk, nothing to say to him. My parents always inform me about his achievements and major occasions. I know he started a graphic design business 2 years ago. He was a successful freelancer before, so he formed a business with many friends. My parents said they're doing okay after 3 years. I think it helped. A few days later, my parents called to say Nick needed my help. Nick was accused of lying about his business's performance. His rent was unpaid for 6 months, evicted from his flat and in debt. He had nowhere to go, but unlike his friends, he was too proud to live with his parents or beg them for rent. Not sure what to say. Since they asked, I told him it was upsetting for him and wished I could help. Unfortunately, I had nothing else and they suggested I house him to help. He lives with his girlfriend because he's homeless. He can only stay with her for a few weeks because she has a roommate. 1 week has passed, so he must find a place. Immediately. Stay there for a few months while he recovers. He refused their offer to stay with them, saying he would never live with his parents again. He refused their money to survive alone, so they asked me for help. I assured them I wouldn't contact him since it would be awkward and uninteresting after 5 years. I don't need others' worries since I'm overwhelmed. We used to be close, so they believed I was the only one who could talk to him and make sense and potentially help. Reminded them we were closed. Their conversation has ended. If he declined their support, he was unlikely to accept my. Unfortunately, my folks kept encouraging me to contact him and provide my support. Finally, I had to stand firm. That was my final decision. I wouldn't talk to him. After that, they whined and manipulated me to stop being selfish and focus on my brother. They say. Not communicating to him when he was down would harm our relationship again, as my ego had done. He idolized me when we were pals, so they think talking to him might help. I knew they were manipulating me emotionally, but it worked. AITA for neglecting my brother? After thinking, I chose not to call my brother. Everyone agreed after thinking, talking to friends, and reading my post comments, that my brother's prior behaviors were incorrect and unpleasant, thus I didn't owe him anything to help him without asking. They think I should call him alone, but if he calls me first, asking for help is another topic. After 4 days, I contacted to tell them my decision. Since I posted here, they have called and texted me daily to ask if I spoke to Nick, including today. I told them to back off because I wouldn't comply. They tried to manipulate me into believing I was the only one who could fix this, so I claimed I didn't care. It wasn't my issue, so I wouldn't help. My parents said Nick had a problem, thus I was responsible as his sibling. They seem to think we should take each other's problems as our own and resolve them as family. I find interesting that they told me that, but they disagreed with Nick and me about Martin. They said Nick should have cut Martin off if he cheated and gave me problems. It's absurd to apply these new morals on me but not him. I questioned them why they disagreed with me during a difficult time. Their response was none. So instead, they said I was distorting their statements to avoid helping my brother, which was selfish and shameful. When they didn't have any for themselves or Nick, and were trying to make me look bad, I told them I was fine with selfish and dishonorable things. But for now, I'd made up my mind and told them to stop bothering me. I thought the argument was done and would hang up, but my mother said something incredibly irritating. Her admission that she always knew I had a big ego was a parenting fail. Maybe Nick was right to choose Martin. She had no idea I would be so harsh and wretched. I knew she said that to hurt me because everyone knows that's my sore spot and I detest it when people bring it up. Yes, she succeeded. I was furious. That made me upset, so I stopped hanging up and confronted her. Because I had lost my temper, I yelled at her and told her she had no right to say so when she knew what happened to Martin and Nick was wrong. Not justified. Her defense was that she understood Nick's past behaviors were wrong. Improper. But given my current behavior, she had to consider it would be the best option, because I was too selfish to care about others. Talking to her was frustrating since she was ignorant and blind. I wasn't aware that disputing with them was pointless because I was unhappy. To vent my anger, I wanted to yell at them until they apologized. My parents called me selfish for 15 minutes, and I said they were disrespectful and only cared about my brother. After the fight, I fled and said I never wanted to talk to them again. The call ended, and I blocked their phones immediately. Quieting has been difficult. I've been fired up since that talk. 2 friends texted Ven about my feelings and stated I was right to block them and to contact me again. I should disregard them. I no longer need to evaluate this because they've stated their priorities. I'll focus on my problems immediately. These people have received too much time and energy. Update 2. Since barring my parents a week ago, we haven't talked. After banning them and made it clear I wouldn't give them what they wanted, I thought they'd stop harassing me. My parents arrived at my house today and waited outside when I got home from work. After a long day at work and being inundated, I was exhausted and unmotivated. As I approached my home, honked twice and threatened to call the cops for trespassing. They came to my car and said they wanted to talk and weren't in the mood to fight, so I needed to give them time and come out. Quite exhausted, not in the mood to talk about Nick. I wanted them to leave and promised to unblock and talk later, but I needed time. They later told me Nick had returned to him because he had no choice. He asked his girlfriend to let him remain longer, but she said her roommates were upset and that he needed to leave since she had promised them he would not stay more than 2 weeks, that this was transitory. Since he was her boyfriend, he would have to share the rent and other bills if he stayed. Nick argued that she was unjust and should have been more mindful of his circumstances because he had to close his business and now had no money, so he couldn't go back. It hurt. But it wasn't my fault, so I told my parents I wouldn't talk to him and let him live with me if necessary. They denied that was their purpose. They sought financial aid from me because Nick had moved back in and paid for everything. Since they retired, they couldn't support him without worrying about their future. They requested financial aid to avoid overworking. They said to send money to Nick for a few months till he healed without talking to him. This time, Nick recovered. They stated that they had raised me to succeed throughout the years and expected me to comply without dispute. Thus, I owed them aid when asked. I didn't want to say anything, so I said I'd think about it and tell them, because I was tired from work and couldn't decide. I asked for time to think because what they were asking was so big. First, I didn't know my monthly payment. Nick wondered if he would recover. Instead of giving me time to ponder before committing, they pushed me away. They made me do this in the car. Having to pay them drove me insane. I got out of my car and told them to leave, or I'd call the cops because I was fed up with their BS. They said they thought I was bluffing and knew I wouldn't. They persisted after my previous admonition not to test me. Grabbed my phone and called the police as promised. I performed it for them, and their skepticism was entertaining. They argued with me until the police hauled them away because they were stupid. I'm blocking them now that it's done. My lawyer thinks we'll need a restraining order against them since things are getting out of hand and I can't handle it again. Update 3. I told my parents I was filing for a restraining order when they visited me a few days ago. After speaking with my lawyer yesterday, we agreed to file the petition today. I aim to get a protective order against them due to their recklessness. Since I blocked them long ago, they undoubtedly harassed me in other ways. Their method is unknown, but they definitely paid someone. Strange things had happened since I called the cops. I received many calls the next day after nothing happened the day before. I replied several times, but they hung up immediately. Similar things happened with other numbers after blocking the number. I stopped answering unknown calls because they were creepy. It got worse when these numbers texted me, knew I would pay for my sins and my parents would never forgive me, calling me a greedy brat and using horrible hate words were also common. I requested a restraining order with my lawyer since I believe my parents are behind everything. None of this is natural. After this, they shouldn't expect my help. I've tried to honor our family and not act, but they don't care, mental health or wellness. Since they know about my divorce from Martin and my years of employment challenges, it's disappointing. Since I'm doing well after my struggles, they want to bring me down. I don't understand loving your child and acting like this, but maybe they don't love me. I accept and don't care. Update 4. I got a restraining order against my parents after 2 weeks. After much struggle, I won. Nick no longer lives with them due to their erratic conduct, which I'm grateful about. Due of a new commitment, I couldn't post project. It was too unsafe for my parents to approach me after they were served. Nick was contacted after they discussed it. I didn't block him since I didn't think anyone would seek out after we stopped chatting, kinda forgot about it. Anyway, he messaged me to say he was disappointed that I had taken such an extreme step against our parents after everything they had done for us. As usual, Dad told me that they raised us and we should be grateful, but I was harsh and disrespectful. Because I was pretentious and told him it was easier for him to say so, since they were going above and beyond to serve him, I was enraged when I read the letter. He probably meant to call me selfish and entitled for not helping. He needed money. And he said he had never asked me, and would never expect it from me since I was selfish. I told him he didn't need to ask me because our parents were already talking for him, so he could blame himself. After sending that message, he quickly contacted me, and I responded since I wanted to talk about this and finish. He probably didn't know our parents had been nagging me to help him. He asked me what I was talking about because he didn't remember telling our parents he needed help, told him everything, and abruptly hung up. I figured Nick wouldn't know about our parents' ongoing pestering, so I told him. No feedback from him. But other family members told me Nick left the house and was staying with a friend since he knew our parents had been begging me for money to help him. They instructed me to contact him and provide my assistance, indicating that they believed him. Couldn't handle alone. They battled fiercely because he thought this was an attack on him and his abilities. How did my relatives learn? Naturally, they were shocked. My parents were crying because I had hurt everyone and brainwashed my brother by speaking out of turn. 2 family members contacted by my parents warned me what I was doing was wrong, so I told them. After everyone understood the whole tale, including what my parents did to me. When justified my conduct, they seemed to recognize I wasn't wrong and apologized for assaulting me without knowing the complete truth. Everyone avoids my parents and never talks to them. I think this was necessary after my parents' actions. They blame me for not talking to them, but the restraining order stops them. Nick's approach toward life will keep us apart until he realizes his mistakes. It's unlikely soon. He'll always be too proud and involved to accept mistakes, like our parents. Typical. But I don't care as long as my life's good. Now I'll focus on my new ventures and live well.